Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Pursuit Podcast. I'm your host, Grayson Garvin. Today's episode is my interview with Tommy Obenchain, who is the founder of SpeakScale.com out of Dallas, Texas. SpeakScale.com helps businesses of all sizes effectively package their offerings to sell more. He is a friend and former Vanderbilt classmate of mine. I hope you enjoy his perspective, experience, and wisdom. So without further ado, let's get to it. Tommy Obenchain, welcome to the Pursuit Podcast.
Grayson, thanks. It's great to be here with you and good to be on the pursuit.
Well, like I said, I'm super excited. And, again, to set the context for, our listeners today, I want to, briefly describe a little bit of our background. Tommy and I were both at Vanderbilt University together at the same time. My now wife actually worked for you in one of your original startups. So when we talk about business and, again, starting things from the ground up and entrepreneurship, I remember, meeting you probably back in Branscombe Quad, which is one of the oldest dorms on Vanderbilt campus. You were there wheeling and dealing right from the start. So you've had it in your blood.
Yeah, like 3 parts fool, 1 part genius. So we're not sure if the genius is there, but a lot of it's you're generous. Thank you for having me. It's fun to look back on those days. They were good. And your wife is a total champion, and she's the real deal. That's what's true. It was a real privilege to get to work with her. Yeah, and those like back then, and then she's an all-star. That's what's true.
Well, she certainly is, as are you. Again, where I really want to dive in to start here is as we step back a little bit on your story, and I want, again, you to have the opportunity to give kind of a 30,000 foot view of your story. But for all intents and purposes, you've kind of lived the dream, if you will. Again, you come from a great family, you went to a great university, you have started and exited multiple businesses. You are now working intimately with business owners, helping them scale their businesses. And so when you step back and look at things objectively, you for all intents and purposes, you've lived the dream and you are living the dream. But as you sit here now with a wife, 2 beautiful little girls, how does Tommy Obenchain, as he sits here today, almost to 2024, how do you define success for yourself?
Gosh, it's a good, those are good words. I think that there's a lot there. The stories we tell ourselves matter, right? And so like you can look back at what you've done, and you can, you can analyze it through a lot of different lenses. And so the the lensing, the stories we tell ourselves, they matter. And here we sit into 24 or end of 23, about to be into 24. And it's kind of fun, right? Because this time of year is a place for reflection. So I would say right now, what I'm captivated by is there are a lot of ways to define success. And we can define it by, there's visible ways of saying this is kind of where my treasure is, right? What's true to me is, and we've heard this a lot, Grayson, but success is knowing and being in a relationship with God, with the living God, right? And that sounds like super spiritual and whatever. I'm just like every day I live more kind of perhaps aware of like that's actually what matters, and actually then what creates life, if you will. And I'm not trying to be abstract. I'm not trying to talk in like religious language or trying to kind of like pull some spiritual card, as much as just to recognize like that's at this stage of my life what's been seen as most real to me. Because in some sense, first, not even in some sense, what's clear is like everything can be taken away, right? Like highs and lows, like I love what the pursuit's about, because it is this recognition of the fact that success is a journey, like that life itself is a journey. So then the stories that we tell ourselves matter. And then what we actually call and recognize is important, like really matters, because it really informs our actions, right? And so the longer that I've been alive, and I've not been alive that long on balance, the more it seems clear to me, like knowing the creator is what actually matters. Now, you lend it to the question why and how, and those are important questions to ask. I don't need to keep going right now, but I do think it's wise to flag that. So that's adhering today.
No, that's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's actually, in some ways, you took the words right out of my mouth, because again, the next segue rather from success to me is purpose. And, again, what you're really speaking to there is deeper purpose, outside of maybe success, however you want to define success. And here at the Pursuit, we talk about the fact that success can be defined very differently for each individual person. So
Yeah.
to back up a little bit, since, again, I would say, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, they're, again, talking about relationship, and specifically relationship with your creator, which I firmly subscribe to as well. To me, that's deeper purpose and meaning in life.
Hmm.
And I do believe,
Yeah.
again, that we were created to be in relationship not only with our creator, but also with one another. I think
Yeah.
that that's also very important. So to step back, since, again, the people that are listening to this podcast come here in a variety of different life circumstances.
Mhm.
Um, how do you feel like you're trying to pursue success? How do you feel like that allows, or how do you view that to allow it
Yeah.
to also correlate into deeper purpose, if that makes sense?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good. I think so. I feel like there's a lot of places I can go with that question, which is like kind of fine, whatever. What feels the most practical to me, what I would argue is probably the most practical is some level of doing it like I can do. I'm like just a like flagrantly selfish person. And I like wake up in the morning and I'm like thinking about myself. And that doesn't do very much for anyone else, right? Plainly. So if we look at like who does God say he is in the Bible? He says he's love. That's pretty insightful. Like as like, well, he's telling us about himself, right? And then like so if God is love and then God created people and God loves people, then there's something that we quickly connect to with respect to like the orientation of the world, which is that like if I'm seeking to serve other people, seeking to serve my clients, that at that point now we're stepping into purpose that is bigger than myself, and I'm stepping out of that like selfish, not life giving like reality that is kind of that is me outside of God. If that makes sense. Again, like not trying to sound super spiritual, just trying to kind of break down. This is how I'm thinking about it in my brain. So yeah, looking outside of myself, I feel like that's the first step in pursuing purpose in what we do. What's maybe important there, just as a follow up to flag, is that what I realize is I can often look outside of myself in an effort to like look good, but is that really what's motivating me? I think that's the bigger heart level question that actually, yeah, it's kind of taken me real like years to get real clear and more truthful with my speaking personally kind of about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. Well, it's interesting because, again, it sounds like you've done a lot of deeper work beyond just, again, foundationally or surface level, what you've
Mm,
done vocationally, up into this point. And I think that that's something too that I want to flag for the listeners here today is, we're about to get into, like I said, very foundationally what Tommy is doing, has done
mm.
vocationally. But I think what's also important is that, again, he finds purpose in something far deeper than the tactical X's and O's, if you will,
Yeah, it's a
of
good word.
specific business. And I think that's really important for us to remind ourselves of as well.
Mm, I see you. Yeah, good word indeed. And like it's a journey
So
to be sure, but keep going. Yeah, this is awesome.
no, 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 that's great. That's great. So stepping into, again, tactfully what you have done, to, again, to speed the readers up, or the listeners up rather, to where, we are today. You come from Dallas, Texas.
Yep.
You still live in Dallas, Texas. You came to Vanderbilt. So at that point, walk us through kind of your inner entrepreneurial spirit that
Yeah.
started very, very early on, and walk us through a couple of the businesses that you started, why, and segue that into where we find you today and what you're doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, totally. Thanks. That's a kind question. Yeah. So thanks for asking. I have always really loved business a lot. Is what's true. Like it's mowing lawns and walking people's dogs and stuff like that. Like I was super into it when I was young and super into like I don't know. It was fun like solving problems and creating value for folks, and then realizing how people like pay you to solve their problems like that. That's kind of neat, right? And that's like a business on like an elemental basis. It's just like we're just creating solutions. And so when businesses seen in that level of simplicity, I feel like for me it's kind of liberating. It's like, oh, this doesn't have to be like this isn't so complicated. And I can kind of rant on this, but I do find that the more you get into different industries, the more you find like they've got acronyms and all these things to kind of like make it sound, like uber intellectual or more complicated, and sophisticated than it is. And I could keep going, but I find it curious. So on the one hand, like it's a speed of understanding thing. Like there's a reason that like in the airline industry, they talk about cost per available seat mile. Like that like chasm isn't just a total like just made up concept. But in the end, like all we're asking the question was like, how much does it cost to like put an airline seat in the sky, respective to that point? And what I'm trying to get at is that I think it's easy to overcomplicate business. Probably could have just said that, but I wanted to pull airlines into it because hey, and so for me, I've always really loved business, always like kind of been into it, always fired me up. Like, how can we create value, solve problems, and I think make money plainly. And there's a deeper like heart level idol there. Like, I think if I have money, that'll make me feel secure and safe. And what God is really addressing, like in my life right now, is that that's not true plainly. Um, which is like which is kind of a big deal and a grace, I would say, on its own right. And I think I say that out loud and like sure people listen and think of me, but I can't really control that. So here we are. The point, right, is like there's this desire, like solutions value, and then money that kind of all sits as a part of like early formative Tommy Obenchain into high school. Talking about that business that Madeline was really kind to work alongside me in. I had a trip that I went on to China when I was a 16-year-old, and I was in Beijing at the end of the trip. Was with a group from Dallas. We were teaching English, and we went to a pearl market at the very end of the trip. I remember being in the pearl market and be like, "Holy cow!" Like everyone's like buying pearls here for like a couple of dollars. And I can go home and tell these my mom's friends for like $100. So I called my dad, which was like kind of an expensive phone call in 2005. And I was like, "Dad, like I need you to wire me like $500 because I've got to buy some pearls." And my sweet dad was like, "Come on, let's give it a try, sure." And so I did. Brought home like like the maximum allowable whatever. I think I was actually pretty below it, but you can like only you can carry so much um like declarable value kind of goods with you through customs enter back into the US before it like becomes a an issue. And I was
A big deal,
below
right?
the limit, but like I was kind of like this is great. And brought pearls home, sold them, started like a very early Shopify e-commerce website, had a really dear friend who helped me build it. Like totally like just did it for free, which was really kind of him at the time. And I think I underappreciated like how much of a gift that was. But the point is like I started this little e-commerce business and most of the money was made selling like to my mom's friends at the kind of at home shows and stuff like that. And that business took on a couple of iterations, like through high school and then like into college, then kind of sat on the shelf. And then we did some cool work with Sam's Club up in Bentonville. And like it just it was a cool journey. That was probably my early like it was my early kind of a more formal like entrepreneurial endeavor, so to say. Yeah, and then you and I met at Vandy, doing the Pearl thing. Like love flying on airplanes. I've always really loved commercial aviation a lot, and that has like kind of always had this like entrepreneurial like captivation to me. I think it would be really plainly fun to start an airline somewhere. But in the same token, that's like a very easy thing to say, very hard thing to do. Or maybe it's a very unwise thing to do. It's not that hard on balance. They're hard to start. It's just that airlines like perennially are bad at making money, but they're really good models for business because they're 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 complex and they can tell you a lot about how business works. Primarily because airlines have to like build the product and principle. Okay, I'm going on a sidebar there. The point I'm getting at, yeah, is college led me into consulting after school, and then my love for airplanes got me and a like great business partner who's a dear friend of mine into the motor coach, the bus industry, running routes with buses, which was really just this like proxy dream of my like, let's start an airline, but instead let's use buses, which was just a wild ride and a business that was much harder to run than I ever thought it would be. And it was an extraordinary experience. First, because like my business partner and I like remain friends, and he is remarkably smarter than I am, is what's true. And I learned like so much, like more than I can quantify about business through him and through working with him. And in the same place, it also just kind of like shattered the glass of the romance of entrepreneurship in my mind and heart. And I think like sometimes every now and again I like to kind of like pick up like a shard piece of that glass and like like a shard of it and like still kind of act like entrepreneurship is this romantic endeavor. And it can be. There's nothing wrong with like kind of letting it sit on that shelf to a degree. But in the same token, I'd say there's a lot of untruth in the romance of entrepreneurship, specifically that like entrepreneurship to the point of the pursuit, to the point of your story, entrepreneurship is a really hard game. And the game is largely about staying in the game. And the game is something that's, this act of perseverance. And what the bus company taught me was that I had a lot to learn about perseverance, a lot to learn about staying in the game because, yeah. because it's a contact sport being an entrepreneur. I've got a joke about that I can tell in a minute, but the bottom line is, yes, sold the bus company, and actually then like after doing the work at Sam's Club, sold the Pearl company, and now have a really wonderful opportunity to work alongside leaders and help them scale their businesses. And so I've got a firm that yeah does just that. And someone asked me recently, like a couple of days ago, like what size company do you work with? It was an interesting answer because it's true. I've got a little bit of breadth insofar as my client set is concerned. And as I answered that question for like the 70 millionth time, what occurred to me, like maybe for the first time, was that more than like size of business I work with or like industry niche that I really sit in. The people I work with, like I work with leaders who are going places, right? Who want to build something, who are builders. It's that space where there's like a lot of chaos and there's a real opportunity for order. And when there's order brought out of chaos, we unlock potential. That's the space that I believe. Yeah, I'm like I was made to work in something to the end of like I love serving in that space because I know that it's a really intense space to be in, but in the same place it's got like all of this, yeah, all this momentum to be captured and then leveraged upon. So I'm gonna unpack that more, but that's what I do today in a nutshell. And you're kind of let me kind of go on for a few minutes telling my story.
For sure. I love it. I love it. Well, one thing that I want to double click on a little bit was you talked about entrepreneurship being
Yeah.
romanticized, right? And so,
Yeah.
you know, you had, Pearls for Life, you
Yeah.
had, again, the bus company,
Yeah.
walk me through, and you talk about that, again, there's this tension that you sit in and really this perseverance required
Yeah.
to um to sit in those seats. And you said even yourself that sitting there, you felt like you had a little lack of perseverance. Um,
Yeah.
so, again, but now
Yep.
sitting, but now where we are today is, again, you've exited both of those companies. Again, you're on to
Mhm.
doing, other things. Can you articulate a little bit of that tension that exists? But because
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
there are a lot of people that sit here that are thinking about, oh, I want to start a company, I want to grow
Mhm.
it, take it to the moon, I want to do all of these things, and
Yeah.
that may be true and may be realistic. However, the journey to get there is is not going to be roses and lollipops. It
Yeah.
never is.
So good.
And so, do you have the ability to articulate what, in a concise way, what that journey was like and sitting in that tension?
Yeah, yeah, so it comes to mind quickly, and maybe I'm just, like, in this season, but insofar as, like, I love these stories, but I think entrepreneurship is a lot like taking the ring to Mordor, which I'm referencing Lord of the Rings and Frodo's epic journey in Lord of the Rings, right? Like, what I've observed, I was talking with my wife about this recently, entrepreneurship is interesting because what you are effectively signing up to do is something like go into, like, a really, like, legit battle where like the odds are stacked against you. And we can totally kind of academically base that statement, but I'm just going to like, for the sake of brevity, say it's not inaccurate, right? Like you're going into a journey where the odds are stacked against you because most businesses fail in the first 5 years. And you're saying like, we're going to go and do this thing. And the problem is you run into battle and like, maybe you kind of like, skirt around a couple swords fights. And then all of a sudden, like a dragon lands in front of you. And what most people do, what I have done to be quite clear is I've like dragon lands in front of me and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a dragon. And I just turn around and run the other way. And like, that's just not going to win. It's not going to work. Is plain. And we can like the metaphor, kind of, I don't know, we can unpack that further. But the point is like, it's entrepreneurship. The reason most people don't succeed as entrepreneurs is because like a dragon lands in front of them and they run the other way and they take their marbles and go home, so to say. Um,
I'm not even a
and
Lord of Ring.
I,
I'm not even a Lord of the Rings guy, and I love that analogy. It just makes like it's such an easy sort of it's such an easy visual to understand where it's like there is this massive impediment that sits in
yeah,
front of
that's
you
it.
that is
That's it.
big and scary and daunting, and in some ways you
Yeah,
probably think, how am I going to get around this? So,
yeah,
and
yeah.
sorry
That's it.
I interrupted you.
No.
So the impediment, the dragon is sitting right there in front of you. Okay.
Hmm.
For you, in your experience, or with the entrepreneurs that you work with,
Yeah,
how do you get around the massive impediment that
yeah. That's
inevitably is going to
interesting.
find its way into your story or
Hmm.
journey in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah, yeah, it's so that's the right question to be quite clear. And because metaphors like sound nice, like sweet dragons, like cool talk, Tommy. But like, what do you actually do? So I've got two things to really like drill into here. First is cash. Like you've got to know got to know your cash position, right? You've got to have real clear eyes on where your numbers are and what you're fighting with, so to say. And what's true is it's easy not to, plainly. So most people don't, because it's easy not to. It's the hard work to figure out like dollars to cents. Where are we today, right? So number one, that. And that has a high correlation to like how are you selling? Like are you getting after it? Are you selling? To be sure, to be clear. Though then I would say the more conceptual point here is you've got to have clarity. Like why are you in the fight, and what makes it worth it to go and slay the dragon, right? Like who in some sense, who are you doing this for? Why are you doing it for them? That's I think for me, and this is where I like make fun of myself, but it's super real. Like I started a bus company because I wanted to start an airline. Like to be quite frank, that's a terrible reason to start a bus company. So you've got this element of like once I got super clear, it helped me go, okay, well now this maybe I should just rethink the whole. Like you can unwind it or just liberate yourself. I'm like, hey, this isn't an airline, great. Like my heart's doesn't have, I can keep going. I think my point's made. So where's cash? And then what's like get real clear. What are you after? And then that real clarity. So this is like I care so much about this, but this is like what I do. We we got to go, okay, what's real clarity? Like, what does that mean for me? Where are we going? What are our goals? How are we measuring progress? What do the next 90 days look like? Like the human brain thinks in 90-day increments. And so you got to, well, you don't have to, you can do whatever you want in with some respects, but it's very helpful to leverage what is like our brain science to its maximum capacity. And that's going to be like simple stuff like goal setting on 90-day rolling basis and stuff like that, where then we're moving tactically like down the field and carrying the ball all the way to the end zone. I'm not a anyways, I can make a sports metaphor, but I won't try right now. Maybe I'll try later. The point is that it is this incremental movement, right? And that then allows you like the dragon to like come fly in front of you, and you've got the momentum to fight it, you've the clarity to fight it, you have the tools to fight it. And I think the point's made. I could keep going, but I think the point's made. Again, it's not so much like that you've got like the sharpest. Yeah, even I say like knowing these things is yeah. I'm rambling. I'm gonna stop myself, but I love this
No,
book.
that's okay. Well, I mean, again, I think you have to have a team of people around you, a community that's going to
Yeah,
continue
yeah,
to
yes,
encourage you. But going
yeah,
back to one of our original topics is I think that you have to have, again, when you are really committed to solving a problem or
hmm
creating a solution to a problem that may or may not exist,
yeah,
that that really propels you with momentum
yeah.
and conviction to
That's it.
continue going even when it
Yes,
does get hard.
yes.
Also, if you can have purpose,
hmm
if there is purpose that can also be attached to
Yeah.
said problem that you're solving or product or service that you're
hmm
offering, if those things can exist in tandem,
Yeah.
that in some ways can be, to use the term that you often reference, that can be the rocket fuel to
Yeah.
essentially propel
Yeah.
you beyond the dragon, or might I say dragons,
Yes.
that will
Yeah.
will exist in an entrepreneurial journey.
Such a good word. Such a good word. Yeah. And what's true, like what's true to be sure. I've heard someone else kind of distill it down to this. I think it's great. Like entrepreneurship is this intersection of like we have like two rockets we fly on. There's skills, there's beliefs, and skills are easy because you can go learn like just about anything, or get a machine to learn it for you, or pay someone. Like you can go like skills are one thing, and they're very requisite. But then there's also beliefs, and beliefs are the far harder thing to like actually get real clear about. But that's the heart level work that yeah, it separates those who stay in the game versus those who get out of the game. And it's not because like being in the game is the end all be all. Um, I'm talking more broadly as to just like living life presently, like as it's something to the end of like as it's meant to like. I don't know if I know as it's meant to be lived. That's too idyllic. I'm just saying like there's like yeah, the life that we're living, like the life that you're living, life I'm living, it has meaning. And so being in it and being
Yeah.
engaged with it is no small invitation. It's an extraordinary invitation. But we've got to like, yeah, that takes clarity. It takes understanding what are our beliefs, what are our limiting beliefs, and then how do we kind of move forward in that place. Getting a little bit more like introspective there versus talking about the entrepreneurial journey, but I think the two are very much one and the
Yeah.
same. If that makes You've got to believe you can
Well,
beat the dragon.
it's
That's really
huge.
like broadly what I'm saying. Yeah.
It's huge. It's huge. So I'm going to use the same analogy. I'm going to use the dragon here for just a second. I'm going to,
Yeah.
walk through
See, Lord of the
how
Rings, we're pulling
I
you in. This is good.
yeah, that's right. How I engage that. And again, I'll get to my question here in just a second. So
Yeah.
when said obstacle is sitting in our way, um, having done some interpersonal work myself post my
Yeah.
baseball journey, I
Yeah.
understand
Yeah.
that oftentimes the detour that I like to take, or maybe not like to take, but am, again, I have a proponent of taking is fear.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
dragon
So
sitting
good.
there,
Yes.
I go to fear. And
Yeah.
oftentimes the fear that enters my brain and my body is the negative fear, is not necessarily
Hmm.
the truth about the dragon or
Yeah.
the outcomes that can exist in despite of that. It's
Yeah.
oftentimes there are these lies that creep into my mind. And that's
Hmm.
oftentimes what derails my my specific path that I'm on at any given time. And so my question to you is
Yeah.
that
That's such a good word.
it, in your entrepreneurial journey or in your life, when dragons exist, what what's a fear that Tommy Obenchain has that he has to overcome in order to get beyond those dragons?
Yeah. That's a good question. It's so good. I love the question. We talk about this a lot, but what are you most afraid of? And that's a moving target for me, at least. I would suppose for most people, plainly. Um, yeah. So what are the fear? Like, what are the fears? What comes to mind first right now is simply a belief that I'm not good enough, and
Mm.
there's a lot that like quietly screams that at me at the very least. And and so then the question becomes, how do you respond to that fear? What does it mean to respond to that fear? Because there's a lot of ways to respond to what our hearts say and tell us, what our minds say and tell us, what we interpret from what's happening around us. Yeah, but that question of being good enough, broadly, it strikes me as the most pronounced in this moment. So I'll go with it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I appreciate you sharing that because well, I would say I think, but actually I know
Yeah.
that you are not alone in thinking that. I
Mm,
think, again, there's
yeah.
it's the imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I think the imposter syndrome is probably more prevalent in society as a whole
Mm, mhm.
than most people would like you to believe. I think
Yeah. Such a
especially
good word.
for high achieving successful people, which I
Mhm.
would certainly put you in that camp.
Yeah. I would. It's good.
So with that being kind of an undercurrent,
Hmm.
what do you do to combat that? Because
Yeah.
I think that there are some ways that it can be done, but how do you combat that when, again, you're stepping into something, you either feel like you're not smart enough, you're not good enough, you're
Hmm.
not equipped enough, you've clearly achieved a ton. And
Mm.
so you are objectively good enough, but how do you go about, combating that whenever that star starts to creep up in your mind?
Yeah, yeah. It's the right follow up question. I've got two places for it. We go practical, like kind of ground level, and then I'm gonna go spiritual because we'll get real deep all of a second on you. Um, the practical is, yeah, is understanding, like field awareness would be the sports term for it. Or like reading your instruments would be the pilot term for it. Like conditionally, what are we flying and what are instruments telling us? What does that mean for how we actually need to respond? Keeping it real simple, real practical, and and that's where I step into, like, having like real clarity of who we are, what we're going for, where we're going, what the next 90 days, like what where like what's the track we're on, why we're in the fight, and then what we're working with from a resource standpoint, so that we're not relying on how we feel to inform our decision making exclusively. How I feel matters. How like our feelings are a piece of what make us human, right? So there's just real esteem to be given towards feeling and real beauty that comes out of feeling. But in the same token, it's not a singular input. And so then in that place, what matters then, like just as substantially as those practical elements, we've got to like read the field with, is then our identity. Like who am I? Who do I say I am? Most substantially, who does God say that I am? Which again, that's where I'm like getting a little deep there all of a sudden. But the point is it has everything to do with everything. And I yeah, I have like great friends who disagree with that insofar as like they treat that as an abstraction, or my kind of using like religion as something of a cop out. And it's where relationship matters, right? Like what I'm claiming is that I have a relationship with God, and that's different than just like subscribing um to a yeah to to a religion, so to say. I can unpack that further. The point that I'm making is that who God says I am has everything to do with then how I interpret and respond to my fears. And it's why I'm really like very compelled by the person of Jesus, because he's this rabbi from 2,000 years ago who made all of these like unbelievable claims about life and God and himself. And either like, yeah. What's true is that I believe what he said is true. And that like that changes everything insofar as then like how I respond to fears. Because Jesus said stuff like abide in me, because apart from me, you can do nothing. He's talking about love and talking about God and who God is. And you can go and like read like the John 15 in the New Testament. It's what that comes out of. But the point, and like for those listening, for me today, like that's I need to go read that. Not just like kind of lightly loosely quote it, because like original sources and words matter quite substantially, as do actions, even more substantially. And where I'm going there, is combating fear on the practical level super important, and responding to fear in the context of like what are the facts, and then what does my faith say? Who does God say that I am? So then I can run that through. Now, like, how do I feel? Well, how do those two like kind of cars in front of it, like cars on a train? How does that inform now how I enter into and respond to the situation? Because what's true is like later today, I'm going to feel fear about something that's totally worth feeling like concern towards. So then it really matters, like both what's going on situationally, and far more importantly, like who and what the creator says about me, about this world, about who he is. All of that, like then can we can step into emotion and go, okay, good. Now how do we how do we respond here into this? I can keep going. I do think it's pretty interesting, like all through the Old and the New Testament, you read God having these exchanges with people and or telling us directly to not be afraid. Um, that's like kind of unbelievable. If we just take that like as a like that
At face
God
value.
that's at face value, right? There's a lot that's there. Kind of, and then there's like he said, why does God keep saying this? Why does God keep telling us that? Um, yeah, it's a good question to ask.
I love it. I love it. So, um, kind of looking a little bit, I want to ask one question for you, kind of looking into the future, and then I want to ask one
Yeah,
question for you, kind of looking back. I'm going to start with the looking
yeah,
back
cool.
question first. Um, so again, for those listening here today that would look at you or listen to you rather and say, "Wow, he's really introspective. He's been really successful." You know, I desire a lot of the things that Tommy seems to represent. Um, so I'm going to ask you to answer this question talking to a Tommy Obenchain or someone like Tommy Obenchain that's just graduating from Vanderbilt.
Mm,
Um, what's one thing that you know now as 35-year Tommy Obenchain? What do you know now that you wish that 22-year-old Tommy Obenchain knew that would have saved him a lot of headache and heartache?
I love questions like that. So I'm just gonna just walk into airport world with me real quick. Airports are so fun, right? Because there's a constant flow of people. And so like I have like I live in Dallas right now. And and so I like know the airports here really well, and like just kind of like they're pretty like regular places for me. But then like I go to other airports like Nashville's airport, right? And like I'm there like semi frequently. But as a result, I think it's cool because I feel like airports this might sound a lot more abstract than I made it to. I'm gonna keep going. I think airports are cool because they kind of allow us to like think of like intersecting our past selves there, right? Like if I just walk past my past self, like what I say to that person, like who was on this journey then, and now I'm here, like later now, and I know what's going to happen. Like what I tell them, I think those are good questions to ask, um, because yeah, because it forces us to think about things differently than just like what's right in front of us, or what kind of what's got us here and now, in the unknown of what's ahead, because the future is a mystery, right? And the human heart loves mystery. Like I'm made for mystery. Anyway, we can keep going. Point is what I tell my 20-year-old self. Thank you for letting me talk about airplanes. Kind of force spaces there for just a moment. Really enjoyed it. I would what comes to mind very practically is I would tell myself like you're going to have to work a lot harder than you think you are, and the journey and the road is going to be a lot longer than you think it is, and that journey is a good journey, and it's going to be okay in the same vein. And I think that is uh, something to not miss at the end there. Like it's going to be okay. Like when that bus breaks down in the middle of the night, and you wonder like, are we all just going to kind of, you know, is this going to be the end? It's not. Like the sun's going to come up, and like you're going to keep fighting, and it's going to be okay. And so you can therein like you can fight with that courage, and in that same place, like don't push back against the hard work. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of, in some sense, like putting yourself out there, even when people reject you, because they will. because they're people.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, there's more I can kind of keep going. I think the line's very clear that I'm making here.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to work hard is probably like the heart of the matter, and then like, and it is going to be okay. So let's start there.
Let me double click on that real quick. This is a
Yeah,
side question. Why? Tell tell our
yeah,
tell our listeners
yeah,
why it's going to be okay. Because in the
yeah.
moment it doesn't feel like it is, but
Mm,
looking back, I think this
oh,
is important. Why is it going to be okay?
yeah, yeah. That's so good. There's so much there. Um, mm, so I'm thinking about in my story, I'm sitting here at 35, and like I know the endings to some of the things that were like, you know, kind of heady that I faced, right? And like here I am, still like living and breathing today. But in the same token, um, I believe that my future self, like, like on this side of death or on the other side of death, would say the same thing to Tommy today. And that's probably the bigger deal if we're going to kind of go like dollars to donuts on that one. Um, what I'm getting at it's where hope matters, right? Like again, this is why the narrative of the Old and New Testaments like is plainly really compelling to me. Is it's a story of beauty, like beauty, God's original design, and like this full unity of humankind with God, right? That then is broken by by vanity and like there's all like what you call fall and sin entering the world and like nice like religious words that mean things are not just meant to be jargon, but in the same place, like it's just this tearing of man choosing himself over God, right? Saying that I would rather like make my own way instead of God, and that then causing this implicit separation with God, which is all sin is, and that's not to minimize at all, like sin, but just more to recognize, like on a literal basis, sin is separation from God, and so then the like narrative of like sacred scripture between the Old and New Testament is this narrative of God's pursuit of mankind all the way to the life of Jesus and his death and then his resurrection from death, which is a wild thing to believe, to be quite clear, that it actually occurred. Um, but the point is that then reforged the unity between God and man so that death no longer like where graves your victory, where death is your sting, so that death no longer has this last word. Because what's true about planet Earth, like little secret for us all, is there's one way out. And it's awful. Death is wretched. Death is not natural design. It's not how God originally created the world. And so the point then is that our vantage point, how we view death, really, really matters. And so you kind of move through the narrative of Scripture and you go, well, it's beauty, it's fall, and then it's redemption, for then the return of that beauty, for then the restoration of that beauty, and that's no small reality. So then, like being in relationship with God, believing that God loves me isn't just this kind of nice feeling, religious thing. It does change everything. The gospel does change everything because it restores a hope that death isn't the ending. And yeah, we can keep going there. I mean, for the longest time, because like Jesus has so much to say about death, but he's quite direct in the fact that those who are in him like aren't going to die, which is really affronting to my fears. Like I talk about like the bus company and like we're like 2 in the morning, like this bus is broken down, people are on it, like they're mad, and it's like I'm going to die. Like at some maybe not like physically, but like this is going to be the end of me. Like that is this recurring part of my entrepreneurial journey. Like this is going to kill me. Like this woman who's mad who sent her the wrong pearls. We're like 2 days before Christmas. Like this will be the end of our business. And maybe not again the physical end of me, but it'll represent something close to it. And it gets so much more personal, right? Like when you're in the hospital with your children, and like you start to watch just the tragedy of our world unfold. Like we have this extraordinary need for hope that is a whole lot bigger and more substantial than my businesses. And the
Yeah.
point is that our hope really matters. And so then, yeah. So then if we can look at who God is and what he has done and who he says he is, it really allows us the freedom, perhaps even the courage to hear his voice say to us, it's all going to be okay. It's just this much gentler reality of knowing him and being in a relationship with him that is actually like this great joy of our lives, this great purpose of our lives. And that like,
Yeah.
has everything to do with our businesses and everything to do with our families and the way that we
Well,
relate to and love others. It's free.
it's
So
kind
yeah.
of it's the gate or the conduit or
Yeah.
the
That's
filter in which you're viewing everything, that
yeah.
all of your life experiences are being viewed through that filter.
That's yeah.
And so,
Yeah. Yes.
because of
Yes.
that, again, it's going to be okay. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. You're kind of let me just like give a thank you for letting me
No,
share my heart. I
I
appreciate
love
it.
it.
This is
It's
awesome.
awesome. It's
You're
awesome.
kind.
So to kind of close our time today,
Yeah.
this is kind of more of a forward-looking question, and I'd love to, for this to be more tactical, tangible,
Yeah.
business-wise. What And I know that you don't know this, but, what does the future look like for Tommy Obenchain,
Mm,
vocationally? What are some of your, what's an aspiration that you have?
yeah. So twofold. I think that I'm like much more consumed. I'm pretty focused more than I've been before on like seeking to listen to God and like what is like what does God want me to know? What does He want me to do? Plainly, those two questions. I've been taught to ask those questions by somebody else, and they've been really helpful. So there's this element of like we'll see. Um, and and in that same vein, as we see then like the vision I'd cast, I would love to. I love what I get to do right now. I love what it allows me, the seats that it gives me at tables with others who I really both care about and love fighting with and for. There's that. So I desire very much to like get to do continues to grow, and and in that same place, I still have this deep dream of starting an airline or being a part of growing an airline one day, and I think it'd be great fun. So um, yeah, and to qualify that a little bit for, like, the airline people listening who are like, "This guy doesn't even know," like, sure, like, totally, put that in the comments, but the point, I'm going for is
He knows a lot, folks.
I
Just
like
an aside, he
it's a
knows a lot.
good industry. No, I think that the yeah, we could academically break down the airline industry. I've gotten to work, as a flight attendant for United for a couple of years, which is the most fun, like, boots on the ground airline experience, I would say out there, to be quite direct, and so for all you airline people who are out there who are like, "I work in corporate strategy at American," or I run loyalty at Delta," like, that's cool, but if you haven't served drinks on, like, the 4th leg of a 2-day trip and 4th anyways, I just we can go on, but there's nothing better than being in the operation is all I'm saying. And I'll totally like go to the mat on that one. The point, um, maybe it's just, yeah, I have this dream of being a part of starting an airline and helping people probably more broadly. Like aviation is fun because there is like so much story to be told in and through the travel experience. And so I love the experience of travel. I love the connectivity that it affords. And there's like great goodness in us being together in person. Obviously, like this is such a fun and valuable medium, being able to talk on the phone, connect on Zoom calls, etc. Like it's great, but there's nothing like being in person. And so I think there's this element of like for me, starting an airline maybe is a little bit broader insofar as I love helping people travel well. I love traveling well myself. I think that what it is like artful, and in that place, I would like to be a part of that on a professional, like let's create some solutions basis, if that makes sense. That kind of breaks
I
it down a
love
little
it.
better. And I totally love serving drinks on airplanes and having fun and getting to wear the uniform. It was the best job ever. I have the best job ever right now. It was also the best job ever. So yeah,
I love it. I love it. Big,
thanks.
audacious goals and dreams. That's awesome. That's awesome. So
Come on.
as
We're
we
yeah,
kind of
we're just crazy.
finalize our time, no, as we finalize, excuse me, our time here today. Um,
Yeah,
I'm a
final
finance
approach.
guy.
Yeah.
You work intimately in my business, but for those that
Love
don't
your
know,
business.
I am a finance guy, and so I love, again, this is not a finance podcast. However, I love to sprinkle a little bit of finance here in at the end. So, as a final kind of end cap question for you, Tommy Obenchain, if you can recall, again, like you said, you love to make money since you were really, really, really little. What's the first thing that you remember saving for in your
Ooh, I like that.
early childhood years?
Yeah, I like the question. The first thing like quickly comes to mind is saving for an airplane ticket to go to Austin and see my cousins. I have great cousins, and grew up pretty like just close with all of my cousins is what's plainly true. But I had cousins who lived down the road from us in Austin, and it was like the most fun thing I could do to go get on a Southwest plane and fly down to see them. And so yeah, I remember saving money for that. What was at the time like $100 round trip ticket and being like, this is such a fun thing to save for, and it was. It was a great party.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for your
That's
time
good.
today. Thank you for your transparency and honesty. And,
Mm,
again, you've clearly achieved a lot um, in your life. And you've also
mm.
been, again, extremely introspective and continue to do great work. So we appreciate you coming on today, Tommy. Thank you.
No, it's a privilege to be here, and yeah, bless the Lord. Like, it's His journey, and it's a gift to be yeah to be with you today. Thanks for this time, Grayson.
Absolutely, 100%. Well, thank you guys for listening today. And remember, at The Pursuit, we believe that for high performance leaders, fear is the enemy. Real focus, hard work, and perseverance is what it takes to win. Until next time, I'm your host, Grayson Garvin, and this has been The Pursuit.